I'll try to be as eloquent. Thank you, Tanit. Hello, everyone. I am Jessica. To start, I'll quote Pauline herself. A quote I really feel a connection with. Movie love is abiding through life. We are lovers who are let down all the time and go on loving. Who was Pauline Kael? This may have already been said, but I want to reaffirm who she was, because she was special. Most people remember her movie reviews. However, the people who knew more of her, even if only a little bit more, could all agree she was unique, particular. Her personality was never held back, and by it being free, it would always influence not only readers, but writers as well. Through her style, she created a connection with you, and that is one of the reasons she is remembered today. She was a petite woman who loved dogs, and to fellow dog lovers, that would be enough to convince you. However, she was also a movie lover, one that has set a mark. She is remembered for many reasons, as a person and as a critic. But as a critic, she is famous because her analysis was different. She had unique views on movies, more critical, more intellectual. She would sometimes include more information and details in her words than the movie itself. Budget made no difference in her opinion, because she cared about the quality and intent of the creator, the care put into the movie. She wanted the audience to be respected. One of the things she wished to see in movies is historical accuracy, and sadly, it is not always present. For this main reason, she did not enjoy Lawrence of Arabia. To quote her, if you want to see it under the delusion that it was going to be about Lawrence, you probably stayed to enjoy the vastness of the desert and the pleasure of the senses that a movie epic can provide. It is not a movie that showcases the character in a revealing light, but a light that makes it seem greater than it really was. The movie was an epic journey, which ignored the realness of Lawrence, in favor of making him and his actions seem grand. The visuals were the priority, while the characters were ignored. Cinema has a tendency to do that, change reality in order to amaze. But for her, this was not right. Pauline could not empathize with the Lawrence portrayed in the movie. He did not seem a plausible human being. He was not allowed to be one. The audience overlooked the details of the plot because it was really confusing. A film is just not a film. She could recognize distortion. The points that the director followed were all set to please the biggest number of people possible, without coherence. It had too much action, too much false suspense. And this is not the only film to be like this. Hollywood does not care about accuracy, because audiences do not usually care for it either. Money is what drives media forward. There needs to be a profit, spending as little as possible. For example, creating historical sets, costumes, vehicles, and weapons is often difficult and expensive, so filmmakers cut corners all the time. A lot of war movies were not accurate in their portrayals. The important thing is the dramatic impact of the story, not if a story taking place in the past has some suspicious objects in it. Only a few will say, hey, that kind of object didn't exist until this last century. Many movies are guilty of this inaccuracy, and most were successful anyway. Take Braveheart. Uh, the Scots didn't wear kilts in the 13th century, and belted plates were not introduced until the 16th century. England was actually at peace with Scotland when the film takes place, and worst of all, because it is the title of the movie, William Wallace wasn't even called Braveheart. Robert the Bruce was called that. Another movie, Pocahontas was only 10 years old when the English arrived in Virginia. The most known movie about her is Gone. There is no happy ending. English settlers attacked and wiped out native populations, and then she was taken across the Atlantic as a curiosity. She was forced to marry an Englishman named John Rolfe, but few people know that. Another movie, The Patriot. It is an action movie that was made to boast about an American hero. It demonized the British in many scenes, but worst of all, I think, is that it downplayed slavery. Filmmaker Spike Lee said about the film, "For 3 hours, the Patriot dodged around, skirted about, or completely ignored slavery. The Patriot is pure, blatant American Hollywood propaganda." But here's the thing, propaganda is needed to sell, and movies are all about selling a product. Media is like a cartel, like Tanit has probably stated before, like we have heard in the audio. It is a mass that can be avoided not as part of the audience or as a critic. Movie reviewers have to be mindful of this mafia like pressure because they usually need to sell the movies which they talk about to make a living. There is rarely any independence to say what one thinks. Even though working in the New Yorker was her dream job, Kael battled the editors of the New Yorker as much as her own critics. She had to fight William Shawn multiple times to be allowed to review risky movies, but she had to relent in the end. She was attacked when trying to express contrary views. Upon the release of When the Lights Go Down, her New Yorker colleague Renata Adler published a review that dismissed the book as jarringly, piece by piece, line by line, and without interruption, worthless. Nothing certainly of intelligence or sensibility. She faulted her quirks and mannerisms. This review was described by Time magazine as the New York literally mafia's bloodiest case of assault and battery in years. Although Kael refused to respond, Adler's review became known as the most sensational attempt on Kael's reputation. When she retired, she did not only do so because of health issues, but because she thought that the quality of media was declining. Everything is dumbed down in order to sell. Everything is now part of the entertainment world. Everything is made bite sized, easier to understand. And I say everything 4 times because it's true. Just look how many movies we humans create, and how many of them hold any trace of originality and genuine care for creativity. Worst of all, people do not look for those things. Readers do not read intellectual reviews. This is something that saddened Pauline. She would always praise very well made movies. She loved cinema. In my opinion, you need to create something really good to be remembered. No matter how much propaganda, how many people watch the movie in the theater to waste time, if the creation is not outstanding, it won't last in people's minds for long. We humans tend to remember the bad or good, not the in between. A mediocre movie will come and go, forgotten with all the other movies that share the same cliches and plot points. That is why we need to read reviews, ones that are like Kael's, reviews that are not held back in fear of being pressured by the media cartel. We need to have better standards like her, and that is what I take from the audio, from her work, from everything. I hope you think so as well.